Hey guys, I'm Daniel Norton here in my home in New York, and today we're going to make a portrait, a location portrait, and also a self-portrait. So like, I've made self-portraits before. I did that one out on the porch. I've made location portraits. I shot my friend Nerlan a while back at her house in Connecticut, and today I decided to kind of combine the two, right? Instead of doing something necessarily moody, I decided to, in kind of focusing on a certain area, I decided to show a space. Now, you can see in the video camera, of course, that this is all lit up. It's running at a really high ISO now, one that I would never ever want to, shoot stills at necessarily. And what I did was I set up my lights in such a way to keep it kind of natural feeling. Basically, I lit the room up, but with some mood and feeling. So I'm gonna walk through kind of my whole setup here, and then we'll shoot some. So I decided, it's a self-portrait, but whenever you're making a portrait of somebody, you want to kind of think about something about their character, especially this kind of portrait, right? So one thing that I do besides being a photographer is I play the guitar. So I have a bunch of guitars, and I thought, you know what, I'll do a shot here kind of in the style that I might shoot a musician, because I love shooting musicians. It's one of my favorite things to do. So the number one thing that we want to do though is once we get our composition figured out, right? You guys can kind of see that the video camera's kind of slightly behind my stills camera. Is I want to kind of make sure I'm controlling the space, right? I'm not going to go for a black frame here because I don't want the window to be completely dead. And if I was to make the window dark, then I think it would just be too drab. I want some light coming through the window, but I don't want it to be blown out. So like in the video, of course, it's blown out, right? And there's also some skylights that are lighting me. I'm going to reduce them down without completely removing them. So I have my Nikon Z6 here. It's actually in Capture 1, and I've got the Profoto remote on top, but I have all the flashes turned off. So let me just take a shot here so you guys can see what that looks like. This is a 1/160th of a second, f4, 100 ISO. Okay, so I made a shot. You can see I already done a test before I started. I mean, basically, you can see me, right? It's not a black frame like we normally do, but it's dark, right? It's dark enough. That light's not really affecting me so much. And now I'm gonna actually go through the process of lighting myself up. Plus you can probably see, although the camera should be dealing with it because I have it on auto ISO, but the light's changing outside. So the flash is gonna give us consistent light. So let's start with the key light. So over on this side here, camera right, or the subject's left, is a Profoto A1. I have it fitted with the dome diffuser to kind of spread the light out, and I have the bounce card on it, using it as a flag. So I'm flagging the light so that it doesn't go too far in the back of the room, and I want it to just only go through this Lastolite diffuser I have here. I use that in the video where we did natural light product photography outside, so I'm using it inside here. The reason why I'm using this and not a softbox is I want this to feel a little bit more open, but I still want some direction on it. The reason why it's in this position, specifically in this case, is because there's a window back there, right? And if I put it on the other side of me or even in front of me, I'm likely to see it in the window. So one thing I'm doing here is I'm kind of placing my light for that reason. As it turned out, that's kind of where I normally like to press my key light, so it actually worked out really well for me. But let's just turn that light on and see what we've got. Okay, so I mean, I'm gonna be leaning forward, my laptop's right here, just so we get the light set up. Eventually we're gonna do a different technique, but for now, this is just so you guys can see. So I'm using Capture 1. And, more or less, this is the shot, right? You can actually see that a lot of the room is already lit up. That's my key light. It looks pretty decent, it's soft. The only thing you will notice, actually, I have a very, very wide angle mirror back there. The light's gonna reflect in the mirror. It just comes out as a white spot. I have it set for my highlight. If the highlights are blown out, just show it in Capture 1. I don't think that's really an issue, so I'm not gonna worry too much about it. I could tilt the mirror or do whatever, but I think for all intents and purposes, it's fine. Okay, so that's fine. And much like many shots, right, when you first set it up, it's like, oh, there's Daniel, he's lit in the space. Hey, we wanna add some dimensionality and we wanna add some flavor to the shot. So the first thing that I almost always do when I wanna add some flavor to a shot is I add a kind of a kicker or separation light. Okay, so this light's in an extra small Chimera. So I've got it in a softbox because I want kind of a soft light. It's not gonna be super soft because it's super far away from me and it's, it's small, but it's gonna be softer than the bare head. The softbox is giving me some control and it's gonna help with my kind of overall contrast. So again, this is just that light. So I should basically be, rim lit essentially, right? And we can see what that light does, right? It's giving me this kicker here. some lights bouncing around in the room actually and giving me like a little bit of light on the front of me even, just because the light's generally bouncing. And you can see that it actually threw some light on that wall back there too. So we can see those are the two lights going on so far. And remember, with no light, it looks like that. So just keep that in mind, that everything that we're seeing is lights that I'm adding. So now, that's kind of like, if I had to come in here and make a quick portrait, like, okay, I look pretty decent, like that's okay, right? But this is an environmental portrait, so I want to light the environment now. So I've got two places where I've placed guitars. I've got, back here I have one guitar sitting on near the table with an amplifier, and then I have another guitar that I'm going to leave sitting here. I'm going to hold one in my hand. So I'm lighting both of those basically using bare heads. In the one that's lighting the amp and the guitar has a warming gel on it, because I thought that'd be nice with the wood tone. It also has the bounce card. Again, I'm using it as a like a way to shape the light. I'm not bouncing, you know, the light with that. That's, you've seen my videos before, that's what I normally use it for. I'm basically keeping the light off like the ceiling and stuff with that light. So those are both in my C group, so let's turn that group on. This whole process is kind of to show you how I kind of think about the lighting, right? I'm putting it up a little bit at a time. Because the thing is, if I had a very short amount of time to work, and I had to get it really, really quick or something happened, the first light was enough to give me a portrait, right? The second light gave me a little bit more depth. If I had to shoot that and I couldn't add more lights, I just would have came in and made it less of an environmental shot and it would have looked good. Now this is gonna give me my flavor. So let's see what those lights look like. Okay, so now we can see what we've got there, right? We've got basically one light over here, which is throwing some light on this guitar. It's on a magic arm, and I have it attached to, you know, basically a bookcase that's there. I'm looking what's in the environment, and I'm using it, right? The other one also is hanging. It's actually up in the ceiling fan. Now, clearly, if the fan was on, that probably wouldn't work, you know. But I put it there because I actually had the lights on earlier, and I saw how the light was shining down spotlit, and I thought, oh, that looks kind of nice, actually. So now we're creating some depth and some flavor with the light. And again, you can control them up and down as need be. Like if I wanted to add a tiny bit more light to one or take away, I could. But I recommend just getting them close to where you think they should be, adding all the lights back in, then doing your final tweaks. So looking at this alone, I think this one is fine with the one that's over here, but I think I'm gonna add just a little bit of light to it. It's pretty good, you know. Because they're both in the C group, I'm not going to use the controller because it would bring them both up. So that's the reason why I'm doing that one by hand. I am in manual right now, not in TTL. I use TTL to get my base exposure, and then I'm going to use manual for any tweaking. Yeah, I brought it up a little bit. That's good, right? Now everything looks good. Let's bring all the lights in. Let's get it set up, and then we'll start actually shooting. Okay, so now all the lights are set up. Let's take one shot like that. Again, I'm not going to be bent over on my computer when I shoot this, but this is just to give you an idea. Now we've got the room's lit up. Each individual guitar has a little sparkle of light on it. The background has a little bit of light on it, plus I have some separation. And just in case you're looking at that and thinking, well, that just looks like just the one light. Well, remember, that's just the light. All these other lights, they make a difference, right? Sometimes you think, oh, well, you're just using a lot of lights, so I joke about use more lights, you get paid more. The reality is that every light you add, especially small lights, can really add to the shot. So the way I'm gonna do this is I'm going to use the self timer first, and we're gonna shoot some shots that way. So let me set that up. Okay, so I've pre-focused. I have a 10-second self timer, and I'm just gonna see what this looks like. All right, take a peek. Yep, looks good, right? Sharp. I'm looking about as good as I can, right? You know, the room is lit. Remember, we're lighting this room any way we want, so I could change, obviously, any of the exposures, but I actually think it looks pretty good. Just take a quick look here. The white table is a little bit bright behind me, but it's a white table. So, you know, there's options. I could dial that light down a tiny bit. That's the B light, but I think I like it. The one thing I'm not loving is the cup behind me, so I'll move that. Whoop. This is the time where we want to look for small details. There's also a fan back there. I'm gonna move those things and then we'll get to it. Okay, so I've moved everything and now I'm ready. And there we go, right? We've got our basic setup. I'm looking a little crazy there with the hair. We'll definitely fix that. And I'll probably turn the guitar towards the camera a bit more. This is where it can be a little tricky. So what you can actually do is like I can go over here to capture one. And I can kind of like practice some poses. So if I want to show more of the guitar, I'm going to want to sit more like. So again, I'm just like looking, you know, you have the ability when you're the photographer to direct the model. So I think this is pretty good. Yeah, that looks pretty good. So let's kill this. And let's do it again. All right, there we go. My hair's still a little crazy, but overall, pretty good, right? Again, it's sharp. The room is lit. It looks the way that I want it to look. And again, we can mess around with this a lot. Like, let's say, for instance, I wanted it to not feel like I want a more dramatic feel. Maybe if I just kill the B light, that might do that, right? We'll have to see. So let's kill one light and just see what that looks like. You know, all of this stuff comes down to kind of tweaking it and finessing it. And it's better to have the lights up than not, right? It's more dramatic, but to me it just looks flat and boring. So, you know, there you go, right? It comes down to kind of your taste and what you like. I think I like all the lights up, so we'll do that. We'll shoot a couple more like this, get the shot we want. Yeah, that looks pretty good. Okay, so I think the other thing that I sometimes do here, and I did this in the port shot, was I set up an interval timer and I just kind of go with it. But I think this is working pretty well. So I'm just gonna shoot a handful like this and then we'll look at them. So there you go, right? That looks pretty good. I'm liking this. Very intense, right? It's got some good flavor to it. It's showing the environment. We kind of modified the environment a little bit. Like I added some warming gel. I put light kind of where I wanted it, but I didn't change it so much. Like if you just looked at this shot and you didn't really know I lit it, you might think this is just kind of what it looks like. And actually, again, comparing it to the video that you're probably watching, it looks kind of similar. The big difference is that I'm shooting at 1/160th of a second, f4 100 ISO. The video camera is shooting at like 3,000 or 4,000 ISO at a 60th of a second. So it's a huge difference, right? This is total control. I'm controlling the exposure of the window outside. I'm controlling where light falls here. I'm keeping it nice and sharp. I'm keeping it crisp because of the low ISO. And that's really what flash gives us, right? It gives us control. We don't have to completely change the environment we're in. We can sometimes look at it and be like, oh, that looks good, but, and then we make our modifications. Okay, so just to kind of show the, the power of flash and how we can manipulate things, remember that this light back here, the one that was shining on me way back here, I know I'm in the shadow now, has a tungsten filter on it. So if I switch my white balance to tungsten, this becomes neutral, right? And then I messed up my exposure. I basically darkened the window by going a faster shutter speed and going into high speed sync. And then in addition to that, I basically just turned everything up to kind of match and kind of tweaked it a little bit. And now we've created something that's a lot more moody, right? It's super blue out the window. I'm lit, kind of spotlit in a sense, and I've thrown just little pockets of light around the room to kind of give some depth to the shot. Just because you're shooting a portrait of somebody doesn't mean they have to be right up front, right? They don't have to be in the quote foreground, right? You can have the person further back and create a cool dynamic composition that way as well. Okay, cool. So that was super fun. It's nice to stretch your imagination. I actually had a different idea when I got up this morning. I was like, oh, I'm gonna do a self-portrait, I'm gonna do something. And then as I kind of started messing around with it, this kind of came to me. And I was like, oh, this would be really fun to kind of really involve the environment. I was actually gonna set up a background and just do kind of a plain shot, which I will eventually, I guess, still do as we go forward through this. But right now, I'm really happy with what I got. Again, it shows my environment, it shows something about me, it's sharp, it's repeatable, right? I could do this if I came in the middle of the night. I mean, granted the window would not be the same, but if I came pretty much any time, you know, during when there's some light outside, I could make it look this way, because none of the light from outside or in this space is really what's lighting me. What's lighting me is the flash. So keep that in mind. I don't think it'd be as good at night. But if let's say, I mean, right now it's the middle of the day, so it's pretty bright out, and I'm, like I said, I'm at 1/160th of a second, f4. If needed be, I could have gone with a slower shutter speed, because remember, if none of the light outside is affecting my shot, right? Like the window is brighter than the light that's coming down here. We can see that, right? So if for instance, it was kind of dark out and I had to go to like, I don't know, 1/10 of a second or something. If it was 1/10 of a second out the window, up here, this light wouldn't be affecting me at all. And like we've talked about before, if the light doesn't affect the shot, then your flash duration basically becomes your shutter speed. So I'd be able to stop my motion even at a very slow shutter, because none of the light in the space would be affecting my shot. It's something that we use a lot, kind of going in a full circle since I didn't really do that this time, right? All the tools that you use as a photographer, as you progress through doing different kinds of assignments, they all work together, right? Just because you're learning one thing for this particular shot doesn't mean you can't use it for others. So go ahead and subscribe to Adorama TV, guys, and ring the bell so you get all the notifications. Be sure to follow me, Daniel Norton Photographer, here on YouTube, and I'll see you next time on set.